I thought I had arrived. I thought I had finally figured it all out. I knew who I was. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew who my audience was. I knew what they needed. And I knew exactly where I was going. It had only been a year since I left my full-time job and started my business, and I was excited because I finally figured out where I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to be doing, and God was just moving in my life in ways He'd never moved before. And so I went to this retreat thinking, God's got something for me here. I knew it's the first time I'd ever wanted to go to the retreat. I was excited. I'm going to go hear this speaker. I'm bringing my son along because I want him to hear what the speaker's got to say. We get there, and he gets up and he starts talking. I got really confused. Why am I listening to this message? He's one of those guys that had this huge story, a story I'd never heard anything like before. I mean, I've been in so many rooms, heard so many speakers, and this guy had a story that would blow your mind. Because I listened to it, I said, there's not a chance that there's 5 people in the world that have this story. No one else has been through this. And I'm listening to it saying, okay, what am I supposed to be hearing, God? I don't get this. So we get in the car, and my son's 11 years old at the time, and he knew what was coming because we do it every time we get in the car after an event like that. What did you learn? He gave me a nice little answer for an 11-year-old, but he turned the question back to me. He said, what did you learn, Dad? And I said, honestly, I don't know. I'm still working on it. He had a lot of good things to say. He had an amazing story, but I don't know. And so I get back into the car, we get going, and we get to my house, and my wife asked me the same question. So how was it? I looked at her, I said, I don't know. I don't know. And so that evening, I was just kind of distraught, like, what was I supposed to get, God? I know I was supposed to be here, but what is going on? And I went to bed just restless. I had trouble falling asleep, wrestling with God. What am I supposed to be hearing? I was like, God, I don't want to criticize this guy. I don't want to get in his space, but I want to know what I'm supposed to learn. I fell asleep with no answer. But then I had a dream. Now, you have to understand, for me, that's very unusual. I don't have dreams, okay? And it was very visual. I could see one person I had just met in the room, and there was a room of other people, and I couldn't tell who they were, but I heard 3 words. Unleash your voice. I said, what in the world does that mean? So I immediately decided I knew what I needed to do. I need to unleash my voice. So I've been writing a book, so I finished editing it, and I sent it off to several friends to read and to critique and come back with me. None of them came back to me. And then my business took a turn for the worst. Everything I thought was working out was no longer working out. I almost had to file bankruptcy. I said, what am I supposed to do? What is this unleash your voice? But that's when the speaking opportunities start coming at churches. That's when I got the call to come to a church full time, which I said, that's not what I wanted to do. But then all of a sudden my voice is coming out. And then at the beginning of this year, I was working on a keynote because as a preacher, I always told people I don't know what to speak about. Give me a topic, give me a week, and I can talk about anything, right? I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to say multiple times. That's when it came to me, unleash your voice. I said, well, what does that mean? Because see, the thing is the reason I've never gotten on stage in front of people to say the same thing over and over again is I was scared. Now that sounds funny coming from a guy who's been speaking for 22 years, but I was scared to get on a stage and say the same thing over and over again. Because if you say one and done, you can mess up and you can go on to the next one. But if I got to get in front of people and keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, what do I got to say? What do I have to say? Who am I to say anything? And see, that's the thing that holds all of us back, isn't it? We've got this ball of stuff that's happened in our lives. We've got this thing that we're holding in our arms, trying to figure out, well, who am I? How am I qualified to do this, right? How am I going to get past everything that's happened to me? I'm the least possible person. I mean, if you knew what happened to me, you wouldn't be listening to me. And these thoughts go through our heads. Who am I? Why? I mean, I'm not good enough for this. I don't deserve to be up here. I've heard other speakers are a lot better than me. They deserve to be up here. But once you become aware of those things, there's still the guilt and shame because you look down at that ball, you've dropped the ball, you're no longer holding it, but it's like, it's still holding on to you. It's still dragging you back. And I mean, you're pulling that thing along, you're pulling it along, and you're trying to figure out how do I get rid of this thing? Because we keep that weight, and so we limit ourselves. We don't get in front of the people we need to get in front of. We don't share the things we need to share. We don't tell people what we need to tell them. And we get stuck, and we stay stuck. And some of us get so stuck we just stand in place. Because we know that ball's there, and we just don't have the energy to move it anymore. So I wonder what it's going to take to move you. I wonder what it's going to take for you to believe that you have something to share. I wonder what it's going to take to get there. And I wonder what it will take for you to unleash your voice. Now, we had a dog. His name was Riley. And Riley was a runner. A little Beagle Sheltie mix, 30, 35 pounds at his heaviest. And this dog looked for every gap he could find. Didn't matter if it was a door, didn't matter if it was a window, didn't matter if it was a fence. This dog looked for ways to escape. We owned him for less than 2 hours, and he almost got out of our fence. I grabbed him by the tail. That's the only thing that kept Riley in our yard that day. And believe me, he wasn't happy about me grabbing his tail. But we quickly learned that this dog was not going to stay on the fence. So I did what any good dog owner did. I went to Walmart, and I got a leash. 30-foot leash, 75 pounds, 35-pound dog, right? Within a week, I looked in the backyard, and Riley wasn't in the backyard, and sure enough, he was running up and down the street with half a leash around his neck. So I go back to Walmart, I get the 135-pound chain that they had, got that, and put him on that. But why did I put him on the chain? Why did I put him on it? To keep him safe, right? Because I knew what was out there. I knew what was outside the fence. I knew that if he got outside the fence, he could get injured. He could get attacked by a bigger animal. He could get hit by a car. Someone could steal him. I mean, I knew all the dangers that were out there. And a lot of the reasons we have this ball in front of us is because we did the same thing in our life at some point. We were injured. We were abused. We were neglected. We were hurt. We were put down. And we put the stuff in the ball and we held on to it and we said, we're not even going to let that happen again. It's never going to happen to me again that way. Ever, ever, ever. And we carry it with us, and it's our leash. It's what keeps us in the yard. But how are we going to get out of the yard? How are we going to get out of the yard? So let me give you 5 steps to unleash your voice. The first thing is we have to unleash our purpose. Okay? Every single person has a purpose. Now, you listen to any of your major speakers, you're going to learn about you need to find your why. John Maxwell, Tony Robbins, Simon Sinek, any of those guys are going to tell you, find your why. Find your why, find your why, find your why. Now, I love John Maxwell and what he's done, and he said 3 questions will get you to your why. 1, what do you sing about? What makes you happy? What brings you joy? 2nd question, what do you cry about? What brings tears to your eyes? And the 3rd, what do you dream about? When you're just sitting still, if you ever have that chance to sit still, what comes to mind? What do you picture in your head? He says if you can figure out the answer to those 3 questions, you'll find your why pretty quickly. Because see, purpose is a part of getting past that ball. Because if we don't get past the ball, then we're never going to get out of the yard. We're never going to figure out what we're supposed to do. And we have to break free. Now, I could give you so many different strategies of how to break free, but the big thing is we have to get away from impossibility. Because a lot of us think that's impossible. I could never speak to a group like that. I could never write a book. I could never get out in front of people like that. I could never share my story. Who would listen to my story if I shared it? But we have to get past impossible, and we have to get to possible. And I love what someone observed. There is no such word as impossible. It actually says, I'm possible. I'm possible. And so I want you to say with me, I'm possible. And I have a purpose. One of my favorite poems comes from Mary M. Williamson. It says, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking back so that others will not feel intimidated by you. You were meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God. It's not just in some of us, it's in every one of us. And as we let our light shine, our presence, we automatically liberate others to do the same. And as we are liberated from our own bondage to fear, our presence automatically liberates others. See, you have a purpose. You're possible. And people need to hear what you have to offer. Which brings us to our second step. So after we unleash our purpose, we have to unleash our message. We all have a story to tell. And it doesn't matter if we like our story. We have a story that needs to be told. And I always tell people there's two strategies to tell your story. One is the hero's journey. You've lived it, you've been there, you've done it, and you've got to tell it. And the hero's journey has a lot of different parts. We're not going to go into all those parts today. But we have to tell the story. We have to know who came alongside us, who got us from point A to point B. How did we get there? How did we make it through that situation? And that hero's journey is what most people need to tell. But every once in a while, we run into people who need to tell a different story. It's the passion story. Now, this is this story where you went somewhere and you saw something, and you said, I can't let that be. It has to change. Maybe you went on a mission trip, and you saw orphans, and you said, I have to sponsor a kid. Or I have to build another orphanage. Maybe you went in and you saw a homeless shelter, and you said, I can't let people live on the streets like that. And you became a passionate advocate for them. And you tell a story based on that passion. You have to tell it to everyone you meet. But you have to tell that story. And the thing is when you start putting your story together, it's one of these things where it's going to be messy at first. Because you have to figure out the pieces. And what I tell people is start where you are comfortable. So if you overcame a major obstacle, start there. It's not the whole story, but start there. Build that scene up. Then once you get that scene, start asking what happened before that? What happened after that? What were the results? Figure out that story because you need to unleash your message. You have to get it out there. And so not only are you possible and you have a purpose, you also have a story. So I want you to declare it. I have a story that needs to be told. I have a story that needs to be told. Well, which automatically brings us to the third point. We have to unleash our audience. Because the thing is every one of us has someone we're supposed to share that story with. Now, for some of us, that's going to be one or two people, here and there. One at a time, couple at a time. For others of us, that may be auditoriums of hundreds and thousands of people. It may be digital millions of people. We don't know who's going to be reached by our story, but there's people who need to hear it. So we have to know a little bit about who those people are. And I wonder, what does your audience look like? Who are they? What do they do? What makes them up? What gender are they? What age are they? What class are they? What do they look like? But what do they think like? What keeps them up at night? What problems do they want to resolve? What are they going through right now that your story is going to speak into? Because the thing is you have an audience waiting to hear what you have to say. You have an audience that's being gathered right now who is waiting for you to take the stage, write the book, get on Zoom to hear what you need to say. And so I want you to make this declaration, and if you believe it, I have an audience that needs to hear my story. I have an audience that needs to hear my story. Okay, so if we have a story, we have a purpose, and we have an audience, that means we also need to have a strategy. So the fourth step is we have to unleash our strategy. And every one of our strategies is going to look different. So I can't go into all the details of what your strategy is going to look like. Okay? But that could include social media. That could include YouTube. That could include so many other pieces. It could include a book. It could include a speech. It could include one-on-one coaching conversations. I don't know what that looks like for you, but you need to know your audience. And once you figure out who your audience is, you have to figure out how am I going to share my story with my audience? How am I going to get it out there? How am I going to make sure people hear what I have to say? And so that strategy, you need to build it. And the thing is you may not have it yet. So you may not be able to declare, I have a strategy to tell my story to my audience. So we're going to say it this way. I have the beginning of a strategy. I have a beginning of a strategy to tell my story. Okay? I have a beginning of a strategy to tell my story. Because if we have a story to tell, we have an audience that needs to hear it, we have to have a strategy. But this is where the fun begins. Because then we unleash our journey. Because our journey is the place where we want to be. Now, so I got that leash for Riley. I told you he's a 35-pound dog, 135-pound chain rated, right? Twisted cables in that thing. It only took him 5 months to break that chain. 5 months. In his lifetime, he would actually break 6 of those 135-pound chains. He lived to be 18. The last one he broke was at 16. Okay? Now, that's when I finally gave up. I said, this dog is not breaking another chain. So I went to Menards, and I got a 500-pound livestock chain. I put that dog on it, and I said to him, I said, Riley, if you break through this, I'm done. You can run wherever you want to run. Unfortunately, over the last couple of years of his life, Riley declined quite a bit. And he couldn't run the way he did. One time he did get off the chain, and he hobbled down the driveway. He knew what he was supposed to be doing, right? He knew he was supposed to be running, but he couldn't run anymore. His hips were too bad. So I picked him in my arms. I said, oh, Riley, how much you've lost. And unfortunately, a couple of weeks later, we had to put him down because he had a seizure and his hips were so bad, it wasn't fair to him to be alive. And we're picking up his enclosure, picking up the chain, and my daughter, with tears in her eyes, says, Dad, look. She holds up the chain. That 500-pound chain, one of the links was only as thick as a toothpick. If you'd given that dog another year, he would have broken a 500-pound livestock chain. I wonder what it's going to take for you to have the tenacity to break your chain the way my dog broke chains. I wonder what it's going to take for you to start on this journey, to go forward. I mean, is it counseling that you're going to need? Is it a coach? Is it a mentor? Is it just to sit down and discipline yourself to write every day? Is it to practice your speech every day? What is it going to take for you to get out and start on your journey? Because here's the thing I know. Big journeys start with small steps. And today what we need to find is that small step. So I want you to take a minute. I want you to think for just a minute. What is the one small step that you right now know you need to take to get yourself out there? So I'm going to give you a minute just to write that down. Because here's the thing I believe, and here's the thing I know, is there's a step that you can take today that's going to get you closer to where you want to be. Because, of course, the old proverb says, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? And so I wonder where that path is going to lead you. I wonder where it's going to take you. Because an unknown path leads to a series of other paths. Because if you don't start on this path, you'll never find the next path. If you don't take that path, you'll never find the next one. If you don't take that one, you're not going to find the next one. And if you look back over your life, you've already made so many of those choices, so many of those decisions. My challenge to you today, unleash. Get yourself out there because your voice needs to be heard. You have a purpose. You have a story. There's an audience waiting for you. Your strategy's coming, and you need to take the first step. Thank you, guys.